Hello, this is Davin from AIESEC UBC, and for today's episode of the podcast, I interview the president of UBC, Professor Santa Ono, to talk about parents, how experiencing different cultures shaped who he is today, what it was like to grow up with the name Santa, especially during Christmas time, book and habit recommendations, and many more. It was a very insightful episode, and I hope you feel the same way. Also, check out our Instagram page at AIESEC UBC. That's AIESEC UBC. And if you think about going abroad on volunteer or internship exchanges, click the link in our bio to get help from our representatives. So, without further ado, here's the interview. Thank you for this opportunity, by the way. It's just so great to talk to other people about how going on an exchange helped them. As I'm from Korea myself, and I moved here in secondary school, and I've been in Canada ever since. So I would love to talk about what it meant for you to grow up as a Japanese, second generation Japanese.
Yes.
In Canada.
Yes.
And then how culture at home differ from culture at school and stuff like that. But before we begin, I would love to hear you introduce yourself to our listeners.
Oh, certainly. My name is Santa J. Ono, and I'm the president and vice chancellor of the University of British Columbia. I'm also a professor in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology, and in the Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Science.
Oh, wow. So do you still teach?
Science.
Oh, wow. So do you still teach?
I still teach as much as I can. Usually each year I will teach as a guest lecturer in multiple faculties.
Okay.
And I also have a small laboratory in the Faculty of Medicine.
This is just one question that I always wanted to ask you. It's a little bit off. But how was it like to grow up with the name Santa? Especially during Christmas time?
Oh, it's very, very interesting. And I actually don't mind it at all because most people like Santa Claus.
Oh, that's true.
I get lots of jokes from Thanksgiving onwards.
All right.
But it's usually a name that people can't forget, which can be useful. And also, it's when you meet people for the very first time, it's a nice icebreaker because people say, "What kind of name is that?" So,
I did read your bio though. It says it's actually Santaro.
That's right.
From Japanese.
That's right.
Could you tell us a little bit about?
It's even a video game.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's Santaro, and Santaro was a samurai character, and so my parents chose that as my first name, but they abbreviated it. And it's not uncommon for parents to abbreviate their child's name. So Alexander becomes Alex, and Jonathan becomes John.
That's true.
And so Santaro became Santa for me.
Yeah, no. My name is Davin, and when I was in elementary school, everyone would call me Da Vinci as well, which isn't too bad.
That's longer.
Yeah, I know.
That's unusual.
Yeah, it wasn't my parents. It was more my friends doing that. I know you have traveled quite a bit to America and other places. How was it like? Do you have any favorite place that you have been to?
Oh, my favorite place by far is Vancouver, British Columbia. One of the most beautiful cities in the world, and be here at UBC. But I've traveled from Vancouver, where I was born, and I have lived in Philadelphia as well as Baltimore, Maryland. And then I went to university in Chicago, and then came back to Canada to do graduate education at McGill University in Montreal. So I've lived in the Francophone province in Canada at a time when there was quite a bit of evolution of the national landscape in Canada.
Okay.
And then I also have taught at University College London in Britain, and was on sabbatical as a professor at Kyoto University in Japan. And so yes, I've experienced science and education in multiple countries, and I've also visited many nations such as Israel and China and Singapore and Germany and Italy during my time.
Okay. I mean, even though you're getting education from different places, What do you think it's different from getting this, let's say, science education from Vancouver or even America compared to other countries? What do you think is the big difference in going abroad for education?
Well, that's a very good question because experiments and science in general is a very global, international process. It's a community of scholars and researchers from around the world. But your question is very insightful that people approach the same questions in different countries in very different ways. Some of that has to do with the culture of that particular nation, but some of it has to do with funding as well. North American science tends to be funded at a higher level than in the UK and in Europe. And so for the longest time, North American scientists would do more experiments. And in Britain, especially in the 80s and 90s, where funding was scarce, scientists would spend more time thinking about the best experiments, perform fewer experiments because they didn't have the resources to carry out as many experiments. And so that really affects how people approach science, and really thinking very carefully about what are the best questions and what are the best approaches to answer that question.
You could say it's more theoretical in European regions as opposed to North American region. Would that be a fair assessment?
I would say that it's changed over time, but there have been periods of time where, especially in the UK, a good part of the day, I've spent time in laboratories there, where people will get together in a department or a group and really talk the questions and the experiments at much greater length than in a North American laboratory. And so you can really see the difference in the culture and in how the same questions are approached in different nations.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I could see how that could be very beneficial. You just go through all the details before you carry out anything. But for me personally, I just like doing things, without thinking through much about it. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear different cultures.
I wouldn't say one approach is better than the other, but I think that there's a lot of benefit for someone being trained or educated in different nations, because then you broaden your own perspectives and your approach to questions, whether you're a humanist or a social scientist or a scientist.
Just from my experience in my organization called AIESEC, I'm a team leader. And it's fantastic because we do have different personalities in team as well. So one person is very much outgoing, but this other person is very much like she has to sit down and think things through before she actually does any work. So it's sometimes it's kind of hard to manage personalities, but in the end, if you do come together, you have a better team and product.
Absolutely.
As the process.
It's actually very beneficial. It's actually very beneficial to departments or to laboratories to have an international and diverse team of students, because, as you say, individuals that come from different cultures and different experiences will think in different ways. And if those come together in a single team, then often that kind of a global team is much more innovative than one which is homogeneous.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So would you recommend students to go abroad, and just in general, whether it be traveling or volunteer or internship abroad or studying Go Global? I know UBC provides Go Global programs.
Yes, actually, it's not only my view, but the Governor General, the former Governor General of Canada, David Johnston, put together a task force, and I was very fortunate to be part of that task force. We met in Rideau Hall in Ottawa about how frequent or how common it is for Canadian or international students at Canadian universities to go to different nations during the course of their studies. And the analysis of the data show that relatively speaking, Canadian students or students studying at Canadian universities are less common or less frequently travel to other institutions during their study. And the recommendation from that group is that it's very important for individuals but also for nations for more of the students to be mobile and to move and spend some of their time in different countries. And in fact, we're hopeful that in this year's federal budget that there will be an allocation to help more students and more universities provide the services that Go Global provides currently to UBC students. And we're hopeful that those resources will allow more students at UBC and also more students at other institutions to be mobile and to have some part of their educational experience in a foreign country.
That would be great. Speaking from my personal experience as well, I had my primary education in Korea and secondary and post-secondary education in Canada. And I feel like I just have more perspective on whether it be education or work ethic, just because, I have seen other people work in different settings, and I can sort of weigh the pros and cons of each approach and hopefully adapt that to my own personal approach to education or life in general.
Yes, I think that it really summarizes well the benefits to the individual student. Mm-hmm. But I also think there's an even more profound benefit to more students traveling and experiencing another nation. Might have a very different ideological view. There have been many world wars and conflicts over the years. And in some cases, there are examples where individuals in leadership positions as heads of state or heads of units in the armed forces have made decisions on how they actually approach a conflict or what kind of force to use based upon their appreciation of the importance of culture and traditions in an enemy country. As we experience growing tensions around the world, I believe that one very important benefit for student mobility, it will be understanding about differences and appreciation, respect of different cultures. So it goes different cultures. So it goes beyond the individual. It actually is really a bedrock to civilization.
Yeah, I'm actually getting a goosebump because AIESEC was as well founded after World War II from students from 7 different European countries, because they believed that it was a lack of cross-cultural understanding that contributed to unnecessary sufferings of millions of people in early 19 to mid 1900s. And now we have evolved into an organization that sent people abroad on volunteer or internship exchanges to honor the original mission statement. Yeah, so we are a little bit running out of time. We only have a few minutes left. So I'll just ask you some lightning round questions.
Sure.
I ripped it off from Tim Ferriss' podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, so what is the first question? What is the book that you present or you gift to other people the most, and why is that?
Well, it depends. For some time it was something called DNA, the Language of God, which was written by an eminent geneticist and director of the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda. And I gave it to people because it really showed that this Nobel class biologist had a very open mind and was very thoughtful about the interface between faith and science. And it was very personally moving to me, and has been very moving to many people that I've gifted the book to. I think more recently, the book that I will start to give to more people is a book called Sapiens.
Oh, yeah.
That really looks at the evolution of Homo sapiens and many of the issues that have come into play because of the complexities and challenges and idiosyncrasies of humans.
Yeah, makes sense. As you said, you do have background in biology, so that would make a lot of sense. It's so interesting you said that, because in high school I was more militant atheist, but as I'm becoming more aged, I guess, I'm sort of saying not maybe utility, or like I understand
utilitarian, like Jeremy Bentham.
Yeah, so I understand why people might go to church, as I have certain mystical experience that I wouldn't necessarily attribute to one religion, but it's very hard to explain in a normal setting, I guess, in a very physical world setting.
I think that faith is only meaningful if you arrive at that faith on your own.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be because your family believes in something, although that is very formative in most individuals' lives. It really should be something that comes out of reflection and something that comes from inside yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's thank you for the answer. Can you tell me an instant where failure set you up for a future success?
I would say that my whole career is full of failures from the very beginning.
Oh, wow.
When I was born into a brilliant mathematician's family, he was a professor at UBC and then the University of Pennsylvania and then Johns Hopkins. And of the three boys in my family, I was the least gifted in mathematics.
Oh, wow.
And then the second thing is that he also cared quite a bit about music and especially piano. And of the three boys, I was the least gifted as a musician. And so I would say my whole life began as a failure.
Oh, wow.
But that the benefit of that has been to really wanted to do with my life. And in so doing, I was able to choose something that was my passion and my own. And I think that has been very important for me throughout my life.
Yeah. What can I say? But my parents as well, I mean, they're very loving. I love them and I cannot thank them enough for what they have provided me, like with opportunities. But they have their idea of what I should become. But right now, I'm sort of coming to terms with what I want to do and how I can make that happen, so I can convince my parents, as to not worry them, but sort of make them trust that what I want to do will be better for me, and hopefully I can pay them back in the future in that way.
Ultimately, all parents want the best for their kids.
Yeah.
Parents love their kids more than anyone else, and it's normal. Parents are human beings, that they will want their kids to go in a direction where they have confidence and where they can be most impactful. But I encourage you to do exactly what you are doing, and that is to by yourself find out what it is that you want to do, because in the long term, your happiness will really be grounded upon doing what it is that you are passionate about.
Yeah. What is one habit that is easily implementable but has changed your life significantly?
One of the, steps that I have adopted, and it took quite a long time. It wasn't until, I would say, the age of 28 or 29 that I adopted time management skills. So I was not always reliable in arriving at a meeting on time, or completing a task on time. And I would say what's relatively easy to implement is to set a schedule or calendar up for every day or for a month, for a year, with specific targets, and to really focus yourself and your energies on accomplishing maybe fewer things that than you want to do, but actually accomplishing them.
Yeah, that's important. Prioritizing and finishing the task. Just a couple more questions and that will be it. Do you have any quick fix when you lose focus?
Well, I think that for me, when I lose focus, what's most therapeutic for me are two things.
Yeah.
One is that I like to play the cello.
Okay.
And so if I'm distracted, I go to my cello and play for an hour or two, and then I usually am much more relaxed and I have a peace of mind and I can focus again. The other thing that often works is exercise or sleep. They seem like polar opposites, but sometimes the best thing to do is to jog or to swim. That clears the mind.
Yeah.
But sometimes what you need to do is just to get a good night's rest.
Yeah, sleep is quite important. Yeah, just the last question. Bow tie is very very much a characteristic of you. It's almost like what can I say? I just cannot picture you without bow tie. Anymore.
Okay.
When did you decide to wear a bow tie?
Actually, it's interesting because what happened was that I was invited to have dinner with a fraternity at the University of Cincinnati.
Oh yeah.
And after the dinner, and until that moment,
Yeah.
about, I would say, approximately 7 years ago, I did not know how to to tie a proper bow tie.
Yeah.
And so I was there in front of 100 of them or so, and I didn't know how to put on a bow tie. It was very, very embarrassing. And so I was determined to learn how to tie a proper bow tie myself.
Okay.
And from that day forward, I almost 99.9% of the time wear a bow tie.
Okay.
So that's why.
Oh, well, thank you. If you have any parting words for students who are thinking about going abroad, what would you say to them?
My advice would be do it.
Okay.
You only have one time to be an undergraduate student or a graduate student. It may seem like it's a little bit of effort to go global or to find a destination. It may seem scary to find a destination. It may seem scary to go to a very different kind of place. But 9 times out of 10, I can tell you that when I speak to students who have studied abroad, that they say not only after they've done it or while they're doing it or decades afterward, that it's the single most transformative experience that they had while they were studying. So my strong recommendation is seriously consider spending some time away from UBC in a very different place. Don't go to a similar kind of school, go to somewhere very different, because in doing so, going outside of your comfort zone, you will broaden as a human being and citizen.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Professor Ono. And yeah.